ye powers fantastic. Goblin, sylph and fey, whose subtle forms no law's material sway, ethereal essences, that dart and glide wherever pleasure or caprice may guide, who leap with equal ease, if ye are bid, a lady's thimble and a pyramid, and scale, alike regardless of a fall, the parlor fender and the Chinese wall, slip through a keyhole, 'neath the listed door, or from the smallest crevice in the floor, or steer your way, and man's devices mock through the dark mazes of a patent lock. Of you I sing not, but my theme shall be of things as quick and volatile as ye, those busy, subtle pronouns, I and me. Unsought, and unexpected they appear, no barriers heed they, and no laws revere, but wind and penetrate, with dexterous force, through all the cracks and crannies of discourse of those with whom self proves the darling theme. Not all I indulge it in a like extreme, some have the sense to cover it no doubt, would they had sense enough to root it out. We therefore bring, as first upon the list, the loud, loquacious, vulgar egotist, whose I's and me's are scattered in his talk, thick as the pebbles on a gravel walk. Whate'er the topic be, through thick and thin himself is thrust, or squeezed, or sidled in, conceiving thus his own importance swells, he makes himself a part of all he tells, and still to this he winds the subject round. Suppose his friend is married, sick, or drowned, he brought about the match, he lets you know, told him about Miss B. a year ago, or never shall forget, what here ensues, how much he felt when first he heard the news. A horseman thrown, lay weltering in the mud, he thought of something that would stop the blood. An hour had a quarrel with his wife, he never saw such doings in his life. A fire broke out at midnight in the town, he started up, threw on his flannel gown, seized an old hat full twice as large as his, and said, says he, I wonder where it is. Was doubtful if 'twere best to stay or go, and trembled like a leaf, from top to toe. In vain at times, some modest stander-by, catching a pause to make his brief reply, cries, dear, or only think, or, so did I, for he, by no such obstacles deterred, runs on, must tell his tale, and will be heard. Woe to themselves, and woe to small and great, when two good egotists are tete-a-tete. A battle this, though not of swords, but tongues, and he the victor who has strongest lungs. Too eager each in what himself recites, to see how little interest it invites, each takes the attention his companion shows, for pleasure in the story as it goes, though judging by himself, he might have known. He is but waiting to begin his own, watching some gap in the opponent's speech to force it in. Like soldiers at a breach, few talkers can detain themselves to weigh the true impression made by what they say, and of all talkers, egotists are lasting to suspect that they may talk too fast, but often, while pursuing their career, rejoice that while they speak the rest must hear. Some dry observer, whom they scarce perceive, sits smiling in his philosophic sleeve, impelled, while others carelessly condemn, to blush for human nature and for them. But 'tis not only with the loud and rude that self betrays its nature unsubdued, polite attention and refined address but ill conceal it, and can ne'er suppress. One truth, despite of manner, stands confessed: they love themselves unspeakably the best. Many monopolists of words have been unconscious quite of their besetting sin, of strong susceptibility possessed, enraptured oft, and oft as much distressed, they deem themselves, nor others deem them less, affectionate and feeling to excess the charge of selfishness, or unconcern in others' weal, with indignation spurn, and think their failing in their weakest part, is having, as the phrase is, too much heart. But tender hearts as well were hearts of stone, if what they feel is for themselves alone. Have you no knowledge of this species? Then take fair Matilda for a specimen, compare the sketch with faces you have known, and ere you quite discard it with your own, what has Matilda, then, no heart to feel generous emotion for another's weal? Oh yes, she has the doubt she would declare hard and unjust to her, beyond compare, her friends' and neighbors' interests to forget she were the last to bear the blame, but yet engrossed by cares and interests of her own. In fact, she gladly lets her friends alone, too eager, and too busy to reflect, what others may, and what they do expect. Calm observation, and acute survey of others and ourselves, are swept away by that strong, rude velocity of thought, which meets no proper barrier where it ought, but rushes on, impetuous and unstemmed, astonished, and abashed, and self-condemned. Would stand Matilda, could she once be shown not other people's failings, but her own, and see, how borne on that perpetual tide, she thinks and talks of self, and none beside, then might she learn to check its rapid force, abate its swiftness, and divert its course, make it through other fields meandering go, and drain, in time, the selfish channel low. Matilda's friend, as few besides had done, a patient, quiet, unpretending one, sits cheerful and unwearied day by day, to hear, as usual, what she has to say by long experience. Now at length, she learns to drop all reference to her own concerns, the insipid dear, or sure, too well declares impatience in discussing those affairs, and then, the eager tone and altered brow, how much her own are dearer, so that now, whether her heart be aching, or it swell with some sweet hope, 'twould be a joy to tell she cheeks the inclination, to attend to some new project of her eager friend, how she intends, as soon as winter's o'er, to make a passage to the nursery door, enlarge the parlor where she loves to sit, and have the Turkey carpet made to fit, or, how she means next spring to go to town, and then to have her aunt and uncle down, or if more intellectual in her mood, how she employs her hours of solitude, her plans, how much they fail, or how succeed, what last she read, and what she means to read, what time she rises, and what time retires, and how her deeds fall short of her desires. All this is very well, perhaps you cry, true, if her friend might whisper, so do I. Whene'er from home Matilda has to go, with the same theme her letters overflow, sheet after sheet in rapid course she sends, brimful and crossed, and written at both ends, about her journey, visits, feelings, friends, still the same. Or if her friend had cast down in a modest postscript in her last, some line, which to transactions may refer, of vital consequence, perhaps, to her Matilda, in reply, just scrawls, you know, along that slip on which the seal must go, I'm glad, or grieved, to hear of so and so. How can she pardon such unkind neglects? Why, 'tis poor human nature, she reflects, judging with kindness, candor, and good sense, takes it from whence it comes, without offense, and she, with meekness gifted to endure the evil she laments, but cannot cure, too wise to censure or resent the ill, sees it, and smiles, as even friendship will, resolves to watch herself with double toil, and root the selfish weeds from nature's soil. And so should we, for we are selfish all, without one real exception, since the fall good nature and good sense in some, 'tis true, do much the vicious temper to subdue, while some unwittingly allow its growth, who yet might fair pretensions make to both. Of all impostors he least wisdom shows, who can and does upon himself impose. Self-knowledge of all knowledge is the best, by most pretended, but by few possessed. That true philosophy not understood, the aim to do ourselves or others good proves weak, for they who to themselves are blind, rarely attain the knowledge of mankind. But self-acquaintance is a certain guide, that key unlocks 10,000 hearts beside. There, in a glass, the common cast is shown. He knows the world who truly knows his own. The tattered wretch, who scrapes his idle tunes through our dull streets on rainy afternoons, the lawless nuisance of the king's highway, houseless and friendless, wander where he may, suspected, spurned, unbound by social ties, with none to mourn or miss him when he dies. Still, to himself, that vagrant man appears the central object of revolving spheres, not less than he, who sweeps with regal robe half the circumference of the peopled globe. All seem for him, that eye or thought can view, the ground he treads, and heaven's ethereal blue, the sheltering hovel he has gained from far, and the hint glimmer of the utmost star. Naught he regards by art or nature made, but as it serves his pleasure or his trade. Mankind, should he define them, this the sense, things bearing purses yielding pence, the ranging doors that meet his practised eye, but places seem where he may knock and try, where'er he stands, creation's dearest spot, for what were all to him if he were not? 'Twas thus I mused as he was passing by, roused by the tones of his harsh minstrelsy, and smiled and marvelled that such low estate wrought not indifference in him to his fate, till, unperceived, my roving thoughts had flown, far from his fate and feelings, to my own, and deep engraven in my heart I saw the same strong influence and imperious law. Self, with all the weight of woe it bears, all its infirmities, and wants, and cares, its untold bitterness, its shame and ill. Why is it magnified and worshipped still? When shall we break that bondage and be free? See our own interests but as others see and feel, as down the ceaseless stream we pass, but viewless atoms in the mighty mass, to view ourselves with stern and stoic eye, calm and unbiased, like a stand-by, keeping aloof, and looking from above, detached from interest, prejudice, self-love. This, while it humbles, yet exalts the mind above the common level of mankind. The soul that knows its mean and bounded length makes some approach to grandeur and to strength. Conscious of littleness, it learns to tower, knowing its feebleness, attains to power. This makes the grand distinction that befalls between the mind that soars and that which crawls, that is a vulgar mind, which never learns the just dimensions of its own concerns, but sunk in petty interests, private cares, fancies vast import in its small affairs. True, the philosopher himself is caught absorbed, at times, in low and selfish thought, but here the difference lies, that he can smile at that contracted temper all the while, and thence his soul, with glad transition, springs tired and disgusted up to nobler things. Poor human nature! Whither should it flee, undone, infirm, and weak beyond degree, but to the well of life? That healthful tide, whose waters, when by humble faith applied, raise up the impotent, restore the blind, and cure the inveterate maladies of mind. He knows, who fashioneth our hearts the same, every minutiae of their inmost frame, to which in that blessed volume he has writ, the line and precept admirably fit. They reach, not actions only, but the thought that tends to folly. Not alone are brought against the act that does our neighbor wrong, they teach the egotist to hold his tongue. How vainly may we follow and digest what human wits and moralists attest, e'en those who studied human nature most, Shakespeare and Johnson, Locke and all the host, and even pore in vain on that bright page which teaches and consoles from age to age, unless we come imploring help and cure, guilty and impotent, and blind and poor, asking for all things new, by faith and prayer, not with some little failing here and there, which, proving inconvenient where it stands, we wish completely taken off our hands, but seek, accounting all beside it loss, a thorough renovation at the cross. Then would the healing streams of mercy wind throughout the sickly mazes of the mind, the weed of selfishness would droop and die, and plants of charity their place supply. That fruitful stream, refreshing as it flows, would make the desert blossom as the rose.